Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Thalheimer, and I'm running for Holyoke City Council for Ward 3. I've lived in Holyoke for about 14 years, and I'm an artist and educator in the community. I've done a number of different things in Holyoke, including being a long-term member of the Holyoke Local Cultural Council, which I currently serve as treasurer. And having lived in both precincts in the ward, I love Ward 3. I'm really into Holyoke as a whole, but I love our ward. I love how diverse it is. I love how much we have going on. And I'm really excited to see what kind of things we can do more effectively in the future. And that's part of why I'm running.
What are your top priorities as a candidate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Top priorities as a candidate, a lot of it is quality of life stuff. We have a lot of crumbling infrastructure. A lot of the sidewalks really need repair. So that is a huge priority. Traffic safety is a huge priority. We have so many intersections that are either unsafe or insufficiently marked. There are some places that could benefit from temporary or permanent like speed humps and like traffic slowing techniques. This is pretty persistent. And trash pickup, like city services, trash pickup and snow plows, particularly in some of the tighter areas in my precinct, is super crucial. So these are kind of the main like nuts and bolts things of like a lot of the municipal stuff. But I also want us to think more broadly about what it means to live in the ward. What does housing look like? Is there safe, equitable housing? Is there equal access to opportunities? What does voting and voting access look like now that both of our voting stations have been combined into one? How much more difficult is it for people to get to that polling station? Is it easier? How do we make that more accessible? And then using that as sort of a springboard out, like how do we organize things in the ward, like cleanups, right? How do we get that fountain in Laurel Park working again? All of these little bits and pieces, we've been doing a little bit of work along the ways, but we're not anywhere near where we need to be. And that's what I want to work on particularly, is like nuts and bolts, quality of life, infrastructure in the ward.
While this question may sound similar to the one you just answered, it has a different angle as this is your plan.
Yeah.
Should you become city councilor, what will be your top priorities as part of a plan and execution of priorities that you have already set, but also the ones that are not only for your ward, but also for the whole city?
Yep. Yeah, those are great questions. As a city councilor, of course, part of my attention is going to be on Ward 3 and working on that infrastructure stuff. But that infrastructure stuff is not specific to Ward 3. And in a lot of places we adjoin with other wards, particularly like that intersection at Northampton and Beach that adjoins Ward 6, and working with the city councilor there, can we finally get a green arrow light, right? Because there's always an accident happening there. Like just last night, I was coming home from an event and there was an accident there and we had to jump out and help before the police and the ambulance arrived. And this happens a lot at that intersection. So that kind of infrastructure stuff spans the city as well as in the ward. But as a city councilor, I'm also going to be looking at things like preserving green space, particularly the Whiting Street Reservoir. That is a conservation project, not a development project. I feel really strongly about that. But I also feel really strongly about making sure it's more accessible, like getting a valley bike station there so people can get to the reservoir who don't have cars, because not everybody in this city uses cars. So those kinds of things, but also looking really carefully about at other development projects, like where are things being built, what is happening around them, and is this gentrification? Because we have a lot of conversations about development and gentrification. Not all progress is gentrification, but we have to be hyper careful of that, particularly because Holyoke has a unique population, and that is part of what makes us so distinct and awesome. And we have to make sure that these communities that we have in different parts of the city are able to remain intact. I don't want Holyoke to become a city where We sell off parcels of land, and then luxury condos that nobody who lives here can afford get built. I don't think that's the right way to go about development in the city of Holyoke. So my priorities as a city councilor are going to be rooted in that like nuts and bolts groundwork, quality of life stuff, but they obviously have practical applications beyond that, like looking at food access, looking at bus access, looking at ways that everybody across the wards can participate in all of the different things that make Holyoke awesome and unique and distinctive and special. I think everybody is running because they love the city and they want to see the city do better. I am no exception to that.
You mentioned as part of your priorities, access and equity. And when you mentioned also for Ward 3, the fact that the voting poll has been now merged into one, all of this has to do with civic engagement, that It is important for the community to remain active as part of a community that contributes in many different ways. So how will you encourage more civic engagement?
Oh, I love this question because I'm a big fan of voting rights and getting people excited to vote. And some of that is because often we have municipal government that is not only not very exciting, but really hard to access. It's not always clear what item is where in the agenda, or how do you go to a city council meeting, or how do you get involved, or how do you vote? Some of that has to be like direct outreach, like knocking on doors and getting people involved. And particularly in Ward 3, and I argue across the city, but especially in Ward 3, this has to be bilingual. It can't just be in English. It has to be in English and Spanish. And this has been one of my priorities for a long time, is this kind of language access. And I'm really excited the city is starting to really pick up on that and do more with it. But we need to keep doing more of it. We need to keep knocking on doors, especially in Ward 3, where we have, in my precinct especially, we have so much turnover. Most of the apartment buildings are here. We have a lot of renters, a lot of people moving in and out, properties transferring hands. I've knocked on doors where people are like, what is city council? What does that mean? Like that needs to shift. Voter guides. We need voter guides. We need some kind of, it doesn't even have to be like a welcoming packet, but you know, when you change your address with the United States Postal Service, you get a mailer full of stuff. Why doesn't the city of Holyoke have something similar? Like, welcome to Holyoke, here's some information you might need. Like, where do you vote? Where do you can get all these things if you know where to ask. Like, the city clerk's office is amazing and they do incredible work. But I think we all need to step it up with our outreach and getting the word out. And I think part of my running is to do with civic engagement too, because I don't look like your typical candidate. But the thing is like civic engagement is for all of us. Everybody should be welcomed. Everybody should be encouraged to participate. It shouldn't be something where meetings are 4 hours long and you can't follow what's going on and everybody goes on these long tangents. We can do better. We should do better. So this is my hope with civic engagement, is that people see me running and think, okay, well, if she's running, maybe I can run. Or someone's at my door talking to me about how to get in touch with the DPW if my trash doesn't get picked up. What other things am I not aware of yet? Everbridge is starting to do those notifications. We're getting them in English and Spanish, but that needs to step up because people need to know how to sign up for that kind of stuff. So like linking all these good systems we have in direct voter outreach, direct civic engagement, direct like fridge magnet on the fridge kind of stuff.
Now, moving on to another aspect that is important for the city, which is the businesses that are right now, well, having different issues. So what are the most pressing issues facing businesses and how will you propose to resolve them?
Yeah, also a good question. The first thing everybody's going to say is the business tax rate, which is high. That is the nature of work in Holyoke. We have some higher tax rates, but also having City Hall develop more really great infrastructure about how to walk someone through the process. Like not just business startups, but if you are doing business in Holyoke, here are the people you need to talk to. Here are the things you need to be aware of. Here's how to get a permit. And I know there's been some work done on that, but more of that kind of thing, especially with business startups. If we have smaller businesses coming in through the Spark program, which is exciting. We need to be business friendly, not just in like, we have to lower taxes, but we have to be business friendly in not making it super difficult for people to do business in the city. Again, English and Spanish, not just English. Again, having hours that are maybe more accessible to people, because right now 8:30 to 4:30 might be really tricky for someone to get in. How to get a permit, how to get connected to who you need to talk to for which thing. There's got to be an easier, more streamlined way to do this. And I know that pieces have been developed, but that kind of stuff really needs to get connected. Maybe this also turns into the Chamber of Commerce developing sort of a buddy program, like established businesses working with newer businesses and doing that kind of connecting. All of those pieces, I think, could be really crucial, and also not just developing business, but developing a business community.
This speaks of several opportunities the city has to improve and to help support members of the community, families, neighborhoods, and businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And while there is always criticism related to the work of elected officials and public servants, there is also opportunities to recognize the work that is being done properly and keeps Holyoke on top of many aspects as well. So according to you, what has the city done right lately?
Yeah, I love this question about what's working, because often we talk about when we're on the campaign, this isn't working, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, we got to fix this stuff. I love the idea of thinking about the things that do work in Holyoke. And there are a number of things that I think are really exemplary. I mean, we always have to shout out and recognize the city clerk's office, who are amazing. Voter outreach, voter education, helping register folks, like they go above and beyond, and they're fantastic. They're always doing it right. I am also personally super excited that we're finally getting Spanish language live interpretation of city council and other meetings. And I have been advocating for this for a long time. I'm excited to see it happening. It's got to happen more. It can't just be city council. It needs to be everything. I was shocked that there was not translation available for like the candidate forums we've seen earlier. That is unreal to me. And some of that is starting a discussion about these things. And I think the city is doing this right in that we are starting to recognize that this is really a necessity, not just live interpretation, but also ASL. And like, how do we get more of this information out to folks? So we're not there yet, but it's, we're doing it right in that we're like, okay, how do we make this start happening? Same way, like, how do we make city council more accessible? When are we going to start talking about childcare for city council and other meetings? So we're starting it, right? We'll get there. I've also been really heartened to see a lot of community neighbor support, particularly during the pandemic. Neighbor to Neighbor was doing like direct food distribution and are continuing to do this. Neighbors looking out for neighbors, that kind of spirit that's always been there in Holyoke, but really manifested in big, big ways during the pandemic. And I hope that part continues. I also think the fact that we have so many people running for these positions is something that the city has done right. Instead of an election where you've got one person on the ballot and it's like, well, my vote doesn't matter. Now we have all these really good candidates and my vote matters even more, and more people are getting involved and becoming aware and getting engaged in the process and going out and door knocking and learning about their candidates. And all of that is to the good. And I think the city is getting that part super, super right. There's also been some other neat things happening. The Holyoke Farmers Market, which I love, has had a bustling season this year, and I can't wait to see what it does over the winter. We have an upcoming food truck festival. There's open markets happening. Like, there's so much popping up again. And I think the city is doing that really right and should continue to do that really right. Ease of permitting, easier to get your food truck on the corner, easier to kind of get businesses supported and eat tasty food and talk to your neighbors. It's all good.
And One last question we have for you as a candidate for city council is on regards of the receivership of the school district, Holy Public Schools being under control of the state. It's been 5 years and apparently not yet any specific time frame for us to see this coming to a change. What are your thoughts on receivership?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get I don't think you're going to get any candidate in here saying, yes, receivership is good, because I think everybody agrees that receivership is not good. Most folks, in fact, pretty much everybody I've talked to, and I support this, we want control back over our schools. We know Holyoke and our students the best. This is sort of a microcosm of a bigger picture. Too often, folks on the eastern side of the state make a lot of decisions about the western side of the state without really knowing us. And even Western Massachusetts, if you think of the differences in diversity between, say, like Springfield and Holyoke versus even more Western Massachusetts, like Great Barrington and Pittsfield, those are all really different concerns. So having an outside to Holyoke entity directing what should be happening in our schools, I think is the wrong approach and has always been the wrong approach. I was against receivership when it started. I'm against receivership now. I want local control back to our schools. And I want a timeline from the state for that to happen. And I don't know if that turns into city council and the school committee pressuring the state to get some answers on that, or private citizens, or working through our elected officials at like the state level. But if we can't continue to go on in this sort of like, well, you'll get the schools back someday, like we need a timeline, we need goals, and we need a plan if we're going to continue with receivership. Ideally, what I'd like to see happen is we just come out of receivership. I think we've seen a lot of development in the schools. I think there's more to do, of course, but again, Holyoke knows Holyoke best. I think we need local control, and I think we need it now.
Well, Anne Thalheimer, thank you so much for taking the time to answer these questions. And any last remarks that you would like to make?
I'm really excited about this. I always get excited about election seasons and about people voting, but I'm really seeing a higher degree of engagement. People are starting to pay attention and really listen and dig in. And I think that's awesome and exciting. And I hope it continues past election season. I hope this continues to people feeling like local government is their government. It's, something where you can come in and sit down and participate in city council and have your voice really heard. Not just recognized, but heard and understood, and in the language of your choice. I think that is key.
In order to add some information, is there any information online where people can find your campaign or get in contact with you?
Yeah. So if folks want to get in touch with me, I have a Facebook page, just Vote Thalheimer. And you can catch me at Gmail. It's just Ann43@gmail.com. I'm also pretty findable across social media. You can always drop me a message. You can message me through the campaign page. I also live on Brown Avenue, and I'm around a lot. I go to a lot of meetings, and I am very recognizable in the room. So come by and say hi if you see me.